Holloway Berry. The Speak Thunder name comes from Montana, my father's father. And Holloway comes from a place called Rock Creek, upriver, probably about 20 miles upriver of the John Day Dam. So anyways, as far as fishing goes, I'm brand new. I'm not like, like a lot of our elders out here that have been on this river, since they, they were little. I learned a lot just in the last 6 years, and I totally fell in love with this place. I was in a really hard place and struggling a lot. A lot of our people are struggling and hurting with what we call generational trauma. It's something that was carried on from, being wiped out, and being defeated and being, whatever kind of hurt that our ancestors carried and whatever they had witnessed, that was sort of passed on to their children and their children all the way down to me. So I had a hard time, I had a really hard time until I made it to the river. My uncle had brought me out here and he started teaching me. He started teaching me on the scaffolds. The scaffolds are year-round for tribal members. We're allowed to have 3 scaffolds in our name. We're allowed to have our own spot on the river, and we go to our tribe, and they have like a whole list of maps of where people have designated spots. So the scaffolds they hang over the river probably about anywhere from 5 feet overhanging the bank over the water to 30, 40, 50 feet. I've seen people like put logs across and winch them up and then, make like platforms. And so basically every scaffold gets 2 hoops on it, and they're 27-foot perimeter hoops. And then we run a long pole that goes all the way out. People call it a stinger or I think I just know it as a stinger. And at the tip there's a pulley. And then we tie the hoop up to that pulley on the outside, and then we tie another rope on the inside, and we pull that pulley, and then we pull the hoop all the way out. And then there are some people that just hang out the hoop and drop it in the water and then leave, and come back and check it. But some of the more successful fishermen, they'll sit on it and they'll sit on it all night, and they'll pull it all the way out and drop it all the way in the water, and then they'll just hold the ropes like that. And then you'll feel the fish hit, they'll boom, and then you just gotta pull it up. And I've heard stories of people saying, oh, they're fishing out all the fish and they're taking everything. And gill nets are really, really regulated. They're nothing like how the scaffolds are. Scaffolds are year round. That's just 20 feet off the shore, and then the fish are out there in the deep water, and we just get lucky and pull up the ones that are coming out at nighttime. They'll come up to the shore, and that's why the scaffold fishermen are right out there. And the thing is, the Northwest tribes combined yearly put in millions and millions of dollars a year, just so that we can, catch some fish and practice what we've been doing for, just like how she said in her prayer, take care of the land that we've been taking care of for, thousands of years. And the fishermen, us fishermen, we don't get millions back, We provide for our families, we provide sustenance when the season's closed, and we can take care of ourselves in a good way like that, because out on the reservation there's not a whole lot of jobs. There's not. I think in Warm Springs it's like a 90% unemployment rate, because the economy is just, and all of the income, 60% of the next town's income comes from Warm Springs. So it's sort of all the money just leaves the res, and if there's something about being out on the water that changes you, it's calming, it's even healing. Like I've seen men come out, with a broken back in 3 places and, healing up and aching everywhere. They come out into the water and they're just like, whoa, man, I feel fine, man. Let's go catch some fish. I don't know if it's fish fever or what, but I'm pretty sure the water is, it has healing properties, and it's a gift. This whole earth is a gift to us. We were given dominion over these lands, and the indigenous people understand that. We know that, we're given dominion over this place, and we're supposed to take care of it.
You take care of the land will take care of you. And so we have our traditional foods, our first foods, and our first foods is water, salmon, big game, roots, and berries. Then we have our medicines. And our treaty would not have been signed unless we had access to our first foods. It was, we gave it 6.4 million acres. And like you said, when you hear confederated, you know there's more than one tribe. And so when I say Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, there are 3 tribes, the Umatilla, Walla Walla, and Cayuses. And then Nez Perce tribe is 1, Yakima tribe is 14, and I think there's more than 3 for the Warm Springs, but there are several tribes within the Columbia River Basin. And the 4 treaty tribes is how we get together, and generally they're called Umatilla, Yakima, Nez Perce, and Warm Springs, and so they don't name all the tribes. But when our treaty was signed, like I said, we had to have access. And so we have a treaty right to harvest our first foods. When we first started, like I said, we went to BIA, and we said, how do we get information on our salmon? Because we wanted to get fish back to our people, because people that's how we live. It's part of our culture, part of our history, and part of our future. And we have 3 areas in which we have salmon: ceremonial, subsistence, and commercial. Ceremonial is always first. And ceremonial fish, we harvest our fish for our tribes, and some individuals come down and harvest them ourselves, but for the Umatilla tribe, we get a fisherman to harvest salmon in April time frame, and we take the spring Chinook, we take them home, we clean them, vacuum seal them, and put them away for memorials, weddings, deaths, rejoinings, first foods, just any type of tribal gathering. We generally bring our salmon out, and it's in that order. We put salmon, we have the water, the salmon, the big game, the roots, and the berries, and water. And that's how our food is served at the table. If you ever go to any of the tribal longhouses of the 4 treaty tribes, you will see that's how we serve our food. And that Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission is the 4 member tribes, or the 4 treaty tribes, and they provide the technical information that we need. And I can tell you that we have told our technical information, our staff, we want the technical information to protect our natural resources. On the Umatilla River, it was really interesting, because when I first started, we didn't have any salmon on the Umatilla River. And in fact, our tribe said, let's plant some fish in the Umatilla River. And we planted coho. We found out as our fish were going down the Umatilla River, they were being diverted into farms by irrigation ditches. So our smolts were in the irrigation ditches, fertilizer for the food that they were growing. And so we tried doing it by ourselves. We tried to say, okay, we don't need to work with anybody. We can do this alone. Well, we found out then that we needed to develop partnership and collaboration. And so we worked really hard to rebuild our Umatilla River springs and summers, or springs and falls, and our coho. And in mid-80s, we had 1 salmon, 1 spring Chinook salmon that returned, and we were so thankful. We had a huge feast in our longhouse to celebrate. We had the farmers, we had Oregon and Washington, or Oregon and BPA, and we had, just all the co-managers we could find to come, who helped us rebuild those, and we made sure everybody got a little bite. And so because we wanted to share that victory. I always liked one of our biologists, he said, how many of you can say you tripled your run size in 1 year? Because the following year we got 3. But it has been growing. So now we get over 3,000 into the Umatilla River. And so water, salmon, big game, roots and berries are our first foods. And what's more important, we work really hard to protect our treaty rights, our first foods. But we also recognize that in doing that, we're creating an ecosystem that is being shared by everyone. Your treaty rights are good for us as well, because 50% of that harvest is harvested by non-Indian fishermen, whether it be a sportsman or a commercial fisherman. We have 24 stocks in the Columbia River. 13 of them are listed under the Endangered Species Act as threatened or endangered. And so we are working really hard to rebuild those endangered stocks, not just for us, but for you. We are not only working on harvest, but we're working on habitat. We're working on in-stream flows for salmon. Our water, we know, is not just our water. We know there are a lot of people who want water. We know it's important for our lives, but we also know that unless we take care of it, we are not going to be able to survive. Water is life for everyone. So it's a huge planning effort, but the tribes do this because it's our future, it's our culture, it's our history.
Like I said, I'm from the Nez Perce tribe. My Indian name is Wapta-Snoot. It means no wings, no feathers. And my mom was Irish and French. She looked just like you guys. And my dad was full-blood Nez Perce. So I got his color, but my sister's got my mom's color. She always tries to tan. I didn't have to come this way to catch salmon. You know, it was plentiful. You know, I grew up catching it right in my backyard, you know, right there on the reservation that they gave us, you know. But we got seeded areas where we can go as far as we can go, the Nez Perce tribe, because that's where our ancestors put it in our treaty, inconclusive. But anyway, I got to see the salmon disappear. You know, it was kind of crazy. That's when those dams came up on the Snake River, and I was growing up, and we found out we're not catching them. They're disappearing on us, and it was pretty hard. And I was working in the ammunition factory in Lewiston, Idaho, and I seen that slack water coming, you know, and I seen the fish disappearing and the sockeye almost gone.
Friends of the Gorge has 4 roles. We're here, first of all, to preserve the gorge. That's how we got started, and to uphold what's called the SNCRs, the cultural, the scenic, natural, cultural, and recreation resources of the gorge. That's enshrined in the National Scenic Act, which passed in 1986. I'm a part of the conservation staff. My boss, Michael Lang, is a brilliant guy. He's got a photographic memory, and he's adept at the law, science, and also public advocacy and lobbying. My counterpart in Portland, a conservation organizer, works with me, and then we've got 2 staff attorneys, because oftentimes when it comes down to it, we have to use the law to achieve preservation of the gorge. We're also educators and explorers. We lead over 100 hikes a year. I just was lucky because I got to lead a kayak trip last weekend down by Foca Rock and beautiful Cape Horn. We also have a couple programs for school kids. We own over 1,000 acres in the gorge, which we manage both for preservation and for recreation. We have a couple great trails on some of our properties. And we have a new role, which is being a connector. We're working on a 200-mile loop trail down the Oregon side of the gorge, crossing over at the Dalles and going back on the Washington side of the gorge. That's called Gorge Towns to Trails. So
Gorge, what kind of trails?
It's called Gorge Towns to Trails.
Gorge Towns to Trails.
Towns to Trails, right. And the idea is that you know, you'd leave Portland, you'd walk maybe to Bridalveil, maybe to as far as Cascade Locks, spend the night, then do the next portion to Hood River. And did you notice the construction on Highway 84? There's maybe you didn't see it if you haven't gone east of here, but there's a very ambitious project to reconnect the historic Columbia River Highway going from Troutdale to the Dalles. The state is spending a lot of money on it, but it'll be possible to go by bicycle or by foot all the way to the Dalles by 2022. They're restoring. They're going to blow a new tunnel through Mitchell Point because it was destroyed when the freeway was put in. So it's a neat project.